Hi everyone, I'm Papadakis and welcome to Stage and Manner. It definitely changes for what the video is, I would have to say, or like what the project is. When it comes to more like game day, analytical, like post-game conversations, when it comes to that, I'm more so just looking at like both teams, their statistics. When you're at a game, for example, you get stat sheets at the beginning, halftime, and post-game. So really just looking at those, watching the game, obviously, but just learning who the opponents are, any stories, check the websites, check the MLS sites, check anything that has to do with certain players. If you see who's out on injury, learn why. So it all really goes into studying the team and the individuals as a whole. But when it comes to like stuff I've done with like Bell, for example, off the pitch, when you're just learning about a player and it's got to be fun, do a little research, get to know themselves, do a little deep dive on Instagram, get to know like what they're about, what their favorite things are. Because at the end of the day, when you're doing those kind of interviews, it's like talking just to any other person. It's not just an athlete. You have to learn about that person. That's what the viewers want to see. It's changed over the years. When I first started here, Ryerson at Rams Live, or I don't know what you guys call it now. I know it was different things back then. I was like a million papers, a million notes on my laptop, and half of them I wouldn't even use. And because I was like just over trying to make sure that I had everything. But with that, I found that I was basically sticking to what I wrote only, and I never really let like my true creativity and personality come out when I had overwritten notes. So now what I do is I kind of just look at the overall presence of the team, of the game, really just learn it. And obviously the more years you work with certain teams or you work in a league, you start to get more familiarized. So from now, honestly, I just use the knowledge I have with me, do research, obviously write down certain statistics that I will need for certain discussion points that'll happen in broadcast, but that's basically it. I kind of just go with the flow and really just make sure that I have my research done beforehand, but nothing physical that I have to carry around with me. So when I first year university in grade 12, I started working with the CWHL, and I had never covered women's hockey before. And I'm not gonna lie, I watched it, but it was not like you watch with the NHL or with the Major League Soccer, football. It wasn't like you see it all the time. So for that, I really had to do a deep dive into the league, look back at 4 or 5 years of history as much as I could, and really just learn about these athletes and these women who are in this league. And that was something that it took a while for me to get used to, but it was just a lot of just researching, reading, creating stats. What I used to like to do was I used to make team sheets for that. So I'd write like the team and the players, and I'd write like 4 or 5 stats or 4 or 5 facts beside each person's name. And I really just started to memorize those and really learn those as I was working through the league. And that's kind of how I prepared for that. Depends, pre-COVID or after COVID. I mean, because of COVID, our in-game stuff has definitely changed. I mean, our final game this season, it felt more normal than it did coming back, because we finally had a lot more things to be doing in stadium. But for live events, it's always changing. It never feels the same. It never feels like redundant. It's always something new. You get to meet new fans, new people. Obviously, there are certain repetitions. For example, like I write my 3 keys to the game every week. So that for me, it's becoming more familiar, but it's never the same thing. So I love live events because you really never know what's gonna come at you, and it's always evolving. And I think post-COVID too, a lot of people are really gonna be wanting to up every sort of experience for fans. You really don't. I'm not gonna lie, there's nothing that can prepare you for something that comes at you out of nowhere. With anything in life, you can be prepared as you want, but when the time comes, the light comes on, it's all you, and it's whatever comes out of your mouth. So when it comes to preparing for those type of things, it's really just getting to know yourself, really being able to feel comfortable, and what helps you is knowing your surroundings, knowing the team you're covering, knowing the athlete you're interviewing, knowing whatever is going on in that league at that moment. Because if you know those facts, you can pull things from left, right, center. You can be able to pull and create conversations. That's the only way you can prepare for it. But there's nothing that's gonna be like, okay, here's what you're gonna say. It's never like that. You know what? The nerves tend to die down as you start to get used to it. But for myself, there's always been moments where I've been nervous and my hands will start to shake a little bit. But you really just have to take a deep breath, as cliche as it sounds. Take a deep breath. I always have a sip of water. I try to drink as much water as possible. I don't know why, it just calms me down. So I drink as much water as possible. I take some deep breaths, and you really just have to tell yourself internally that you've got this, and that's the way I combat nerves. I mean, I've always been a pretty loud person. I think it's honestly just part of who I am. But when it comes to projecting your voice, you have to always remember you're not yelling at people. You're just having a conversation. So you want to be able to enunciate certain things. You want to be able to add emphasis on certain words and excitement. That way they feel the excitement coming from you. So honestly, yeah, you just have to make sure that you're not yelling at people, because I know some people use projection as like a yelling. It's not yelling. It's really just bringing a loudness to your voice, but also a confidence in your delivery. I said it when I said it during my 4 years, and I said it, and I continue to say it now. Ryerson was honestly one of the best experiences I have ever had in education. It really taught me a lot about myself, but it also taught you how to learn and grow on your own, because as much as it was an educational system where they taught you things, they also taught you how to fend for yourself in a lot of ways too. They taught you how you need to go out and you need to get your own experience and your own things, and I really took that into my own hands. I volunteered everywhere when I was here. I worked as much as I could. I was part of Rams Life for my entire university career here, education. So for myself, it was a great experience. They teach you a lot of things in class, but they also have opportunities in every avenue you'd want to take outside of class as well. One piece of advice is, I don't know if that's going to be one piece or different things in one sentence, but I'll give it to you anyways. One thing I will always say is learn who you are as an individual. There are already those people who are on air for a reason. We don't want, and the industry always tells you they're not going to keep getting copycats of the same person over and over again. So what I always say is find your own creativity within yourself, learn who you are as a person if you want to be on air, and get to know what your style is, because at the end of the day, people are going to hire you because of you, not because you're someone else. And that's always something that I've really stuck with, because there's nothing better than originality. And another thing I will always say is take every opportunity you can when it's presented to you. And that doesn't mean say yes to everything and undervalue yourself, but it also means give yourself the time to gain experience and let yourself be the person who's learning until you can finally gain enough experience to be the one who's going to teach. Tip I have is always just treat them like you're talking to another person on the street. Obviously, you need to have respect for these athletes because they are amazing at what they do, but they already know that they're an athlete. And when they're being interviewed, the last thing they want to do is have someone who's like, oh my God, you're this person and I'm so excited. And yeah, you can be excited, but at the end of the day, treat them as if they are teaching you a lesson while you're asking these questions, and learn from them and be excited about what they're saying. Don't just focus on the questions. And I always think that that's something a lot of people do, is they just focus on getting these questions out. But just have a conversation with them and you'll actually get further along in these interviews than just focusing on the questions being asked. You can't take anything personally, because when there has been times where I've had to interview players after championship losses, and that is definitely a tough job. But number one, don't take anything personally, because they might not be they're not mad at you, they're mad at the situation. But you have to be respectful. You can't be like, what happened out there, when they already know what happened out there. You can't ask these questions that they're going to be like, really? But you got to be able to formulate your questions in a way where it's talking to them about finding the root, or finding that one answer that you want, but in a respectful way. And it's just taking things as they come and really just feeding off of the other reporters around you too. If you find that they're not responsive to a certain question, don't ask that question. Learn to ask it a different way, or maybe just don't ask it at all to that individual player.